Welcome back to Conservative Conversations. I'm your host, Reid.
And I'm Frank.
Today we're going to be talking about the Republican primary debate, the Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom debate, and more. So let's get into it. Before we get started, listeners, I would like to remind you to please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And a little programming note regarding our YouTube channel. I recently discovered that the links that we put in the description weren't showing up as proper links to be clicked on. So I've slowly been going back through some of the past uploads and fixing the links. So if you happen to have ever tried to click on the links and they didn't work, I apologize for that. But hopefully I'll have those all updated soon, and going forward, you should be able to click on the links in the descriptions. And this really only applies to the YouTube. If you're familiar with your own favorite podcast player, you should be able to access the links in the show notes there. And to get started with the news, we're going to talk about the fourth Republican primary debate that took place recently. It was held by News Nation, I believe is the channel, in sponsor with, I guess, Rumbles, where they stream it online. And it was moderated by Megyn Kelly and two other ladies who I'm not familiar with, so I don't really remember their names.
It was definitely interesting to see her back in sort of like prime time, even though it's not really prime time because of this, News Nation on Rumble. But
right.
I thought it was very interesting to see her there. I didn't really expect it.
I kind of forgotten that she was going to be one of the moderators. And I thought they did a pretty good job at handling the candidates. I'm sure it's easier that there's only 4 of them that were on the stage this time as opposed to 7, 8 of them.
Yeah, they've definitely been dwindling down.
Right.
And also, I didn't realize this was the 4th one. I feel like I missed one somewhere along the way, but
yeah, I almost didn't know this one was coming up because I hadn't really heard about it prior till I feel like the week before. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty interesting one. As usual, if you want to talk about who you think won, I think the winner is whoever you already liked. I still think that's the case for most people. I mean, I'm sure there's some folks out there who might have their minds changed or opinions swayed a little bit by some of these debates, but for the most part, whoever you like going into them is who you like coming out of them. But that's not to say that somebody can't have, criticisms for their favorite person's debate. Like, I'll start with Ron DeSantis, because he's so far as my big ticket winner. I thought he did pretty good, as he usually does. I would say one of my criticisms is he sometimes doesn't really answer questions very directly, but that's, of course, typical of politicians. And he also always has these little anecdotal. Yes, that word. It's always hard to get out and not confuse with antidote. But yeah, he always has one of those little stories, and I think his most popular ones talk about the woman who had to go take stuff out of her shopping cart when she got to the checkout counter. But for a positive, I thought he did a pretty good job at kind of hammering both Chris Christie and Nikki Haley on their weak stances regarding these transgender treatments for minors.
Right.
He kind of took both of them to task on that. Like, recently, Nikki Haley was on TV saying that it should be left up to the law and the parents, or the law should stay out of it, sorry. The law should stay out of it and should be left up to the parents. And Chris Christie also believes that same thing. Which, we're not talking about some 16-year-old who wants to get a tattoo. We're talking about, children and, young teenagers who are being convinced to remove their genitals and inject themselves with chemicals and hormones that will, in some cases, permanently, well, probably not even in some cases, most cases, probably all cases, permanently alter their body.
Yeah, sterilize them.
Right.
Pretty much.
It's a completely different, topic, whether if you want to compare it to like the whole tattoo thing.
Well, absolutely, and there is nuance to it. And
right.
Like, just generally speaking, I mean, because the sound bites that I heard from the debate, I won't speak about anything other than the debate, but Chris Christie was saying, I've always sided with parents, and I think parents ought to be able to have, the buck should stop with them, basically. And he said the comment that, and you might not always agree with what parents want to do for their child or whatever, but that they ought to have that freedom.
Right.
Well, the only problem is with that is, sure, in your household, do whatever you want. Nobody, the school, the state, the federal government, nobody should be saying what happens in your house, But to force the trans issue into the schools by allowing the boys to use the girls' bathrooms and vice versa, or carving out special rules that say trans people use the third-party bathrooms, or, like what they call the family restrooms or whatever.
Right.
Well, that influence still spells over in the school ecosystem. Right. So the other kids, let's say somebody who's more sheltered and doesn't realize that this trans phenomena is going on, well, now they see it. There's the school made a special bathroom. Why? You know how kids gossip and stuff. And then next thing you know, your kid's learning about all this stuff that you don't want them to know from the school environment. So, you have to take certain things like that into account, too. And we're dealing with minors.
Right.
So I think it should be pretty stiff, actually, that this shouldn't be allowed in the school. And if you want to go home and do whatever, fine. But not here.
Right. Well, I think, at least for Ron DeSantis' part, calling them out, it's beyond just the school stuff. It's allowing parents to even go to the doctors and get their, children's genitals removed when they shouldn't be. I think that's kind of mostly what they're getting out with that particular subject.
Well, I agree, and that's why I talk about the spillover, though, too, because if Johnny leaves on a Friday as Johnny and comes back on a Monday as Susie, that's gonna ripple through the school, and
right. And like particularly with young girls, you often hear, but people have heard about stories of like eating disorders and having issues with body image, and we wouldn't really allow parents to indulge their child's delusions and let them purge themselves and gorge themselves and
starve themselves,
right, and all that, to let them go along with how they perceive themselves, because it's harmful to them.
Well, and often you'll see with adolescents that things are like fads,
temporary.
Oh, Brittany made herself puke, so I'm gonna make myself puke,
right?
Whatever. Yeah. So I mean, imagine that. Imagine, just because I said Johnny before, Johnny went home as Johnny and came back as Susie. Well, imagine that Johnny's best friend says, "Oh, well, I want to be Jennifer. I don't want to be John. I want to be," and they're doing it just because their friend did it.
Yeah, there have definitely been some people who've talked about this as like a social contagion. Happening amongst younger people.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, I wasn't necessarily talking about Ron DeSantis. I was just saying that between the two, Nikki Haley and Chris Christie, he seems to be weaker on the issue.
Yeah.
Even though I think he's got better sounding sound bites.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the only distinction I wanted to make there. And, nothing happens in a vacuum.
Right.
And that's why I actually side with Ron DeSantis, and I like that he called them out for it, because I think that's something that we should be very stern on as a society.
Right.
The schools and our society in general,
Right.
You shouldn't be allowed to do that as a minor.
Right. And I think for Christy and Haley negatives that I had about their debate, I'd probably pick that they're kind of weak on that issue. But the positives, I would say for Christy, it's kind of hard to come up with one since he's so anti-Trump, but I think he does do a pretty good job at telling it straight when it comes to some issues, like foreign policy issues and stuff like that. Because he is good about doing that, I think. But he's just so anti-Trump, I don't know why he's even running.
Well, it's like, Ben Shapiro said in that post-debate analysis that we listened to. It's like he's got some really good political instincts.
Right.
He's been through the ringer.
Right, yeah.
In his political career. He's been through a lot, and he's done some good. But it almost seems anymore like he's just going through the motions, though, that he's just like a talking head. And, that's basically is what he is. He does the whole network circuit. He's on CNN and MSNBC and all their panels and Fox News and whatever. He'll take any media interview from anybody. I think they're the ones paying his paychecks, anymore. But I don't know, though, because something about it, just the performative aspect, just screams out to me as that he's like a hack anymore, though, too.
Yeah, right. I mean, I feel like if this wasn't his campaign, the anti-Trump campaign, because the way he talks about him, he sounds like a leftist with Trump derangement syndrome. That he's such a dictator. I mean, I have my own problems with Trump. I've aired them on this show, but he's certainly not a dictator. Because you know how you know when he's not a dictator?
How's that?
Because he's not in office right now. Dictators don't leave office so easily. I mean, sure, he kind of drug his feet and put up a fight in his own way, but he left. He's not our president now. Joe Biden is. So how's he a dictator?
Well, one of the only other things that I have to say about him is I think it's just so obvious, like you've said, that he's sort of a one-trick pony at this point now. It's just anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump.
Right.
But what just kills me about it is you can visibly see that he takes enjoyment from being anti-Trump. At that last point, you remember one of the last points he makes in the debate is he says, folks, in November, you guys are going to go out to vote.
Yeah.
But then he gets this smirk on his face and he says, but you know who won't be able to vote? And it's like, why would you take so much enjoyment out of imagining that this man who's done no wrong is stripped of his right to vote, won't be electable, blah, blah, blah. And that's the part that really just sours me to Chris Christie, is you can just see the joy that bashing Trump brings him. And I don't like that. That's awful.
I don't either. But yeah, like I said, I think Chris Christie would definitely be doing a little better if his campaign wasn't the anti-Trump campaign. If he was actually running to be president, I think he'd be doing okay. But he's not. And that's, I guess, Vivek. We haven't talked about Vivek yet. He is certainly a lightning rod. He likes to stir stuff up, I suppose.
Yeah, he's something, all right. He's very interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yep, I'll give him that. He's definitely commanding when he's speaking on the stage. Or, commands your attention. But I think he really disappointed me when I don't know what exactly to phrase it as, he went after Nikki Haley's conversion to Christianity. Because if listeners don't know, Nikki Haley's an Indian of Indian descent. Her parents immigrated here from India, but I guess at a certain point she chose to convert to Christianity, because I assume her previous faith was Hinduism or of some sort. And for whatever reason, Vivek had to bring this up. And to me, it seems like he was trying to bring it up to suggest that she can't be trusted because she's converted her faith.
I think that is his point.
Right.
Because he had made some other quote. There's some other quote out there where he said, like, the easiest thing for me to do would be to change my name and convert to Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, he hasn't done that. So I think he's just doing it as a comparison to her to either imply or outright state that she's disingenuous, that she's just a politician. She's not a genuine person.
I mean, I suppose that could certainly be true. I mean, nobody's pointed anything out to me to really suggest that it is. I mean, I guess I would want to know at what point she decided to convert. Did she do it shortly before she was going to start running for office? If so, then I would certainly understand where he's coming from a little bit more.
I think it's just sort of a whole can of worms kind of argument, because I don't think somebody else's faith is really my business. Right.
Because nobody, I mean, out of the 4 people that were on that stage, as far as I'm aware, he would be the only one who's not a Christian. I don't know how religious Chris Christie is. I certainly don't think he's like agnostic. Well, he could be agnostic. I don't think he's an atheist, Chris Christie. But Ron DeSantis is certainly a Christian, and I suppose Nikki Haley is. I shouldn't say I suppose, but she identifies that way. That leaves Vivek. He's the only one who's not. So if he's going to go after Nikki Haley's faith, it almost seems like everybody else could say, well, you're not even of a Christian faith, so how are you going to uphold, or how can we trust that you're going to uphold the Judeo-Christian values of this country? I mean, I certainly wouldn't make that argument. I don't have a problem with Vivek being a Hindu or whatever his religion is.
Well, of course not. But I think he's sort of making a faux pas, because there used to be things, I know the world has changed, but there used to be things that you didn't discuss.
Right.
You know, and I would put someone else's faith in that column of things that you don't discuss.
Yeah.
But we're talking about somebody who's basically, you know, with an asterisk, first-time politician. He's not exactly an American in the traditional sense, you know, because he has these, he still clings to his Indian roots and his the faith that comes along with that,
right.
You know, from the old world and everything. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say anything too negative, but he almost just comes across to me like he's just grasping at straws.
Right.
Or another way to put it would be to just throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
So right. I think in that way, like I say, I think the thought is he's trying to paint Nikki Haley as being disingenuous. But I just don't know how well that comes across to the average American person.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So yeah, that'd be my biggest complaint about Vivek's performance at that debate. I don't know if I really have a positive. He did okay otherwise, I guess. Yeah, I don't really have anything specific. Other than that, I thought it was very, very distasteful to go after Nikki Haley's religion.
He did give the impression to be picking on her.
Yeah, that seemed to be the impression that's from everybody, because even Nikki Haley kind of said it herself at one point. Something like, I love all this attention you guys are giving me, something like that. But yeah, it seems like they were all kind of ganging up on her, because she has been rising in the polls, so that's usually the target.
Well, I'll tell you, because I don't know how much more we have to say on, you know, these
well, there's
debates,
only one other thing I wanted to try to run through with this real quick. I think Now, if I could pick and choose, like, who's going to drop out next, kind of play that game, barring all but Ron DeSantis out of those 4 dropping out, which, is not realistic, I think Vivek should go first, because his votes would primarily be split, probably most to Donald Trump first, and then DeSantis, and then maybe some to Nikki Haley. And then Chris Christie should drop out, because his votes definitely aren't going to go to Trump. Well, a very small number, anyway. Then probably Nikki Haley would get the majority of his votes, and then Ron DeSantis. And then I think if Nikki Haley dropped out, all her votes, or most of them, would probably go to Ron DeSantis, because everybody else on that stage is running as the not Trump candidate. So we gotta start whittling them down to Trump versus not Trump. And I'm certainly no analyst or pollster, but if I had to bet on it, it seems like it should just whittle down to Ron DeSantis anyway, because he have the most votes that aren't going to go to Trump.
Well, that seems to be the way it's going.
Yeah.
And what I was about to say is one of the things that drives me nuts with these things, because, there's a big performative aspect to it. I hate when things get cheesy, when they have these cheesy lines and these cheesy moments, and it's cringe to me. It's like nails on a blackboard. And there were a couple of them. Vivek, of course. He had some real cheesy moments that I didn't really care for. Like, he was calling them all out for saying that they've all supported Trump before, but now they're Monday morning quarterbacking their decision to support Donald Trump, and they're trying to, Monday morning quarterback it. Yeah. He said he had to hit that twice because he really cared about that, making that point, that they've all supported Donald Trump. Well, excuse me, but just from listening to Vivek, it sounds like he has supported Donald Trump at various times.
Right. He's basically Trump mini-me.
Yeah, so who is Monday morning quarterbacking anything? And what a cliche. I just hate that line so much, it's ridiculous.
Right.
Not everybody's a sports watcher. That's not just a super applicable term. You know what I mean? Right. Monday morning quarterbacking usually refers to people who have watched a sports game and they say, oh, the coach should have done this at halftime and the coach should have done that. And the coach... Well, this is politics, man. And what's it got to do with football? It just doesn't seem to really be a great term. And it's something that you see all the pundits on TV say. All these, like, the Morning Joe types of people in the world. Right. The Whoopi Goldbergs on The View and that kind of thing. It's just such a sort of ridiculous term. I don't like it.
Right.
So when I hear those sort of catchphrases like that, drives me nuts. Right. Another big one is Chris Christie. Because, they're not as cliche, like traditional cliche, but it's almost like you can see it, like I was saying before. He gets this smirk on his face, and you can see the joy come into his eyes. And he's about to deliver some zinger about Trump.
Yeah.
And that just, I don't know, it turns my stomach in a way. Because it's so predictable. Even though I don't know what he's about to say, I can bet you $100 it's going to be anti-Trump. And so I don't really have two about Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis. I mean, something about Nikki Haley and me, I talked about it the last time we discussed Nikki Haley, so I don't really want to delve into this, but something about her just hits me as cringe, period.
Yeah.
She's kind of a very cringy person in my book. But I don't have any specific examples of cringe or cliche from the debate. But I will say that Ron DeSantis gave me no big... I mean, I'm sure he had his lines and his setups and his, things ready to go. But none of them just hit me as, oh boy, that's pretty ridiculous. I can't believe he said that.
I'll let you finish, but I did remember something about Nikki Haley that I'll bring up real quick.
Well, you can go ahead and say it, because the only other thing I was going to do is to give my sort of ranking of who I see should drop out first.
Well, I remember the one cringe thing from Nikki Haley this past debate that we both got a big good laugh out of. When she threw out that statistic that for every 30 minutes a day that somebody spends on TikTok, they become 17% more anti-Semitic.
Yeah, we both got a good laugh out of that.
If you do the math, within 3 hours, you're over 100% anti-Semitic.
Well, you're basically Hitler.
Exactly. Yeah, we both got a good laugh out of that statistic because it sounds so funny. Like, what? But yes, that was probably one of her cringe moments. I would love to see where she pulled that from.
I'm sure that there's some kind of data or some kind of report or something that she's drawing off of, but the way it came out just sounds so preposterous.
Yeah, that spending that time makes you, a very specific percentage more anti-Jew. Just sounds kind of crazy.
It does. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just so farcical.
Right.
The idea that you or I could sit and watch TikTok for 3 hours and we're going to be any different or have any different opinions, or we're going to suddenly, I support Hamas and fly the flag out in front of our house. Yeah, right. I mean, it's just sort of ridiculous.
Yeah. But anyway, now we can move on to Ron DeSantis and your little breakdown.
Well, I won't overly complicate this, okay? Because for me, mine's slightly different. We're different people, okay? But mine's slightly different than you. First of all, I think Chris Christie should drop out because, in my opinion, and that's all it is, but it also seems pretty obvious, he's not really running a campaign for himself. He's running a campaign against Trump.
Right.
That's not a campaign. I don't think that's going to get you into the White House. It's sort of ridiculous. Secondly would be Nikki Haley. This becomes a little more personal, but she is sort of the neocon candidate.
Right.
And we're already in this hotbed of mess all around the world. There's all these wars and all this activity going on. I don't want somebody who's going to pour gas on the fire in any way, shape, or form. And I do think that would be Nikki Haley.
Right.
Third would be Vivek, because I like him. He's energetic. He's young. He's different. He's the sort of person I would love to see become a Republican president. But I don't think he's the right man for the moment.
Sure.
Plus, I think there's a trust issue. Sort of like what I was just saying, where even in my opinion, he's been hypocritical, where he's calling them out for supporting Trump, but then he basically has been echoing all of Trump's lines throughout the whole thing. And the last thing I'll say is I have, through these debates, I have come closer and closer and closer to Ron DeSantis, which I didn't really see in the beginning. I didn't think Ron was the man for the moment, but more and more and more, I am believing that Ron DeSantis should be the next Republican president.
Right. I feel like his time is now or never. I mean, because he made a good point in the debate. We're only going to get 4 years of Trump, and then we got to do this all over again. We got to find a new Republican candidate going against who knows what Democrat. And then if we can get Ron DeSantis in there, I feel like, especially if he does well, more people are likely just to vote for him again, second term, than a potentially unknown Democrat. And we'd much rather have 8 years of a Republican than only 4 and have to do the whole shenanigans again. So, and even if Trump does get his 4 years, well, Ron DeSantis has only 2 years left in his governorship, and which ends halfway through what would be Trump's term. And then what's he going to do for the next 2 years? Because some people think, well, he can just go 2028. Well, he's got to make sure he stays relevant for 2 years, because or else his fire could be gone. He's got the fire now. So I think now is his best chance if he's going to do it, and he very well may lose. He might not win. But like I said, I think now is his best moment to win if he's going to go for it.
Well, there's two things I'll say on that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, this is our channel, and I can say it, I will say it. But first of all, I agree with the timeline. I think that that's genius. I think he's making a great point. I think, just like you've said, the fire, he's got it, I think that's wonderful. In a way, that's almost convincible enough to me to just say, yeah, forget Trump. Let's do it. Let's go Ron DeSantis all the way, baby. Let's do it because, it just seems to line up. The trajectory looks so good for the next 8 years.
Right.
But there's still part of me that loves Trump.
Sure, there are definitely things to love about him.
If you remember the first time around, he had promised he was going to drain the swamp and do all this stuff, okay? And it didn't exactly work out that way.
Right.
But this time, because of what he's been put through, he is saying clearer than ever that he's going to basically lop off heads from day one when he gets in there. And I don't know what it is about me and just American politics. We've been following for years, and there's been so much stuff, so much frustrating things go on.
Right.
I mean, I could just point to a quick couple examples. I'll hit my favorites. Eric Holder, did some nasty things.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing really happened. Lois Lerner did some nasty things. Nothing really happened. Obama himself, I mean, this is kind of wrapped up in the other two names I said, but he was involved in some pretty nasty scandals. Biden and Hillary Clinton, of course, sitting there saying, what's it matter if they went for a walk or took their dogs out and got killed? What's it matter? And nothing ever happens to these people.
Right.
But they're trying to cook Trump like a fried egg, Yeah. And that is so exciting for me to imagine him actually going in there and really doing something about the mess in Washington. That part of me still wants to vote for Trump.
Right. Yeah. I think that's certainly a good case. If I was going to play devil's advocate, the only thing I would say is, we can't be so sure he's actually going to be able to get it done since he didn't do it the first time. I know he's got, kind of the
vendetta.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To give him a better reason to try to do it, but we can still never be certain if he's actually going to be able to do it. But we're still never certain if Ron DeSantis is going to be all that great. So,
but see, in a way, just the only reason I wanted to bring it up is because, like you were saying, this is the time for DeSantis. He's got the fire. Right. Well, I sort of feel that way with Trump too.
Yeah, I see that.
Because if it doesn't happen now, if it's not Trump, then I feel like I basically better just forget my grievances because nothing's ever going to be done. I don't see Ron DeSantis going after Hillary Clinton. I don't see anybody in the future ever dragging these things back up again. If it's not going to be Trump, those issues, and there are more. I only listed 5 little things. Right. There's plenty more. And if those things don't get put under a microscope and don't get litigated, so to speak, I don't think they ever will.
Yeah. And I would guess that most people probably would think that they never will.
Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, you might say it's a done deal. It's all in the past, but that just kills me because
of course.
It sounds like Hillary Clinton. What's it matter now? And it's it just crushes my soul. Something should be done about it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But anyway, like I was saying, Ron DeSantis keeps coming up and up and up and up, in my opinion. Because I can't say, I mean, I always liked Ron, but I was sort of so on the Trump train. I still kind of am, like I just said. But Ron DeSantis, let me put it this way. Trump hasn't been in these debates.
Right,
He's not been standing his own. He's not been standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder with these people, whereas Ron has.
Right, yeah.
And I understand that they're throwing the book at Trump and everything like that. And Chris Christie got so giddy about. They're trying to deprive him of the right to vote and be president ever again and all this kinds of stuff. So, I mean, that is out there. And if that's how it comes down and Trump can't vote and Trump can't run and can't become president and maybe they put him behind bars, Ron DeSantis is looking like a fresh rose, you know?
Yeah.
No baggage, nothing. Right. He's out there. He makes a lot of sense. He sounds really good. And I don't know how many of you would have caught it, but he did a debate against Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, Governor of California.
Right. And so I thought I'd just bring up, because you said, you know, who knows in the next cycle what Democrat he may be running against or whatever. Well, I'll tell you, that's who I envision is Gavin Newsom. Yeah. I don't know who would be better from the Democratic side.
Well, it makes sense because I believe his term is also his governorship term is also in line with the same year as Ron DeSantis. So he'll be out of his term in 2026, the same time Ron DeSantis would be if he's not the president.
Right. And that's one of the things that I think is interesting and sort of telling in a way. I don't know who's telling me this, but something's sort of telling that they're mashing up Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom and that they're both going after it and they're both doing a debate against each other for no reason, seemingly no reason, you know? One of the more interesting quotes that came out of that debate was from Gavin Newsom, and he looked right in the camera and said, well, one thing I can guarantee you is that neither of us are going to be on the ticket, you know, for the general for this cycle. And it's like, well, what makes you so sure? Because we still have roughly a year to go, and who knows what may happen. And I bet if they put Newsom up on the ticket, he'd be on the ticket. So where does he get off saying, you know, like he knows the future, neither of us are going to be on the ticket?
Well, I think Sean Hannity even tried to get Newsom to say, you know, if they came to him, would he take it? And I think he definitely did not answer it straight. He, you know, dodged it like a politician does. So yeah, I'm sure he would take it, even though he's trying not to say, because he could have just said no if he legitimately did not want to do it. If they came to him, he can just say no. But he's not saying no because he wants to leave that door open.
Of course. Yeah. Which is why he's doing the damn debate, to be out there, to be in, you know, center stage in people's minds. But anyway, there were some other points. Now, this is where I will get just slightly negative on Ron DeSantis, is because I think there were some real missed opportunities in this debate with Gavin Newsom. There were some things that they got into, you know, like talking about the lockdown protocols under COVID and how California governed itself versus how Florida, you know, was governing itself. And I just remember sitting there listening to that and thinking, well, Ron, everybody in America was going to Florida. Huh? Everybody. There were all these celebrities, politicians, AOC. Remember,
I was about to say her name too.
Everybody was down in Florida. So for somebody like Gavin Newsom to say that California did it right and California did it early and California did it best and all this, I would have been like, oh yeah, well then why did everybody and their mother come to Florida?
Right. Well, he did mention that little story about Gavin Newsom's father-in-law coming and talking to him in Florida. And
well, he said he moved there.
Yeah, I understood it. Yeah, he moved to Florida and then spoke to Ron DeSantis and said he liked it there. So he should have made drove that point home a little bit more. Kind of what you're saying. Everybody was coming to Florida.
The point was about the COVID protocols and everything. Right. And, you know, Gavin was trying to say, well, we followed CDC and we did this and we did everything right. We were just in lockstep with what the CDC said. And if I were Ron, instead of being on the defensive about, well, we did everything as we were told and as we were supposed to, and we called panels and we did blah, blah, blah. No, I would have just been like, well, then why did everybody come to Florida?
Right, yeah. Yep, that pretty much makes it pretty clear.
Yeah, and there were some other just missed opportunities like that. I mean, I don't really have like a list of them because Ron didn't come off as negative.
Right.
And I don't really have negative things to say about him. I just think he could have hit Gavin Newsom a lot harder because, in my opinion, Gavin Newsom's a joke.
Right. I mean, there were even times where, because there were points where Sean Hannity would put like stats and stuff and data up on a screen, I guess, for them to see.
Right.
And there were even times when Gavin Newsom was sitting there talking about whatever the info was related to, trying to talk about how good California is regarding that subject. And Ron DeSantis would just say, the data's right there, right in front of you.
Right.
And of course, Newsom doesn't care because he's got a narrative, an agenda, and an ideology to push, regardless of what the data is right in front of his own eyeballs.
Right.
So I didn't have any like notes because I wasn't prepared to take notes when I was watching it. But
Yeah.
I thought it was a reasonable showcase of the two different policy directions, just like when we first kind of heard about this debate possibly happened. I mentioned that I think that's what it would be good at doing is giving them the chance to show the differences between conservative policies and more liberal policies.
Well, exactly. And like I'm saying is, I don't think it's just me in America who thinks Gavin Newsom's a joke. I think he's a joke to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think Ron could have pointed that out. I mean, everybody should remember the French Laundry incident, you know, where he went, whatever, the restaurants were supposed to be closed or you weren't supposed to be in groups larger than whatever, 4 or 6 or what, I don't remember exactly.
Right.
But then he gets caught, whatever it was. I'm sure you remember the story. I just don't remember the exact particular details, but it was either like after hours or while the restaurant was supposed to be shut down, or he was in a group much larger than he was supposed to be in or something like that.
Sitting elbow to elbow.
Yeah, and it's like, if I were Ron DeSantis, I would have said, what national headlines did I make? Did you see me go to the French Laundry?
Right.
When I wasn't supposed to? No, that was you. Did you see me go to a hairdresser when they were supposed to be closed down? No, that was your aunt.
Right.
What's her name?
Pelosi.
Is that even his aunt?
I don't
remember.
No
They're
idea.
related somehow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the only headlines Ron DeSantis made are the incorrect headlines about how he's killing all the old people in Florida by not locking stuff down.
Huh. What a great statistic.
Yeah. And how'd that turn out? He's still got plenty of old people down there, I'll tell you.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, this is one of the differences between liberals and conservatives, in my opinion, but I think it would have been much better to do it the Ron DeSantis way and just say, screw the statistics. Because if you look at the states like California, where they did go total lockdown, they just had those old people dying all alone in these care facilities.
Right.
Without their family members around,
like
nobody able to access.
Yeah, literally on their deathbeds, not being able to see their family.
And that's terrible. I'm sorry. I just don't agree with that. For as long as man has been around, there have been people who brave diseases to help others. And, if my grandmother were dying, I would want to go hold her hand. I don't care if it's contagious or not.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So I just think that's terrible what the country did at that time as far as the elderly. And I think if you want to say, well, you killed more people because you allowed, because you didn't lock them down, or you killed more people because you did lock them down. Oh, well, which one's worse?
Right.
I'd rather die with my family around me than die alone in a cold place.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I thought that debate with Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom was a pretty good one.
I thought it was good in exposing, because here's the kicker.
Uh-huh.
You remember how it ended?
No.
They both spontaneously agreed that they'd stay on for another hour.
Yeah, and then we
keep
come
debating.
back from commercial and poof, they're gone.
Gavin Newsom had to go. It was all Gavin Newsom.
Was it? I didn't...
It was confirmed by like 6 different outlets that Newsom his wife or girlfriend or who, I don't know what it is, but
I think a wife.
she had told him no. Basically, if you read between the lines, they're mopping the floor with you. We're not going to keep doing this.
Yeah,
No.
you look like a fool.
Yes. She shut him down and said no. And I just remember thinking, well, wow. I mean, because that makes you look even worse.
Right.
Than if you came back and kept letting Ron DeSantis mop the floor with you.
Right.
At least you can stand there and take it.
Right.
But to walk away after...
agreeing.
Exactly.
I feel like Newsom was the first one to say yes. If I recall, I feel like Ron didn't really say anything because he almost didn't seem sure about sticking around.
Well, because nobody expected it. Even Sean. He was like, what? Well, I guess...
Yeah, well,
I guess we'll stay on for another hour.
Right.
And the next thing you know, now Sean, to save face, Ron and Sean both said that it was by mutual agreement. But no, it's out there. Like 6 different outlets have confirmed that it was all Newsom that said, we're not going to keep going.
Right. Yeah, because he pretty much looked like a fool.
Well, he is a fool, in my opinion.
I don't know how much the debate helped Ron's presidential campaign, but...
I'd like to know how many people watched it. I mean, if you're out there and you watched it, I mean, please comment, send us something, send us an email. I'm very curious to know how many... I mean, because surely our listeners are like-minded. So I wonder... did this draw a large audience? I wish I had that statistic. I should have looked it up before we came on.
But listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. And you can also subscribe to our audio uploads on YouTube. And please be sure to share with your friends. Sharing is caring.
And as always, we thank you for listening.